Hello, this is Jude and Joseph, and we're doing religious experience today.
Religious experience is defined as any kind of experience in a religious context. All right, these are the key terms. We're not going to read them all out because there's quite a few here, so if you want to have a look at them, just pause the video. Friedrich Schleiermacher. He says religious experience is self-authenticating.
So he derived 9 main types, but you only need to know 4. And the 4 main types is visions, with the example of Saul on the road to Damascus; conversion, with the example of Nicky Cruz; mystical, with the example of Saint Teresa of Avila; and corporate religious experiences, with the example of the Pentecost.
Okay, we are now to visions, which is defined as something that cannot be seen in ordinary sight. They usually contain a message, and people can receive them whilst asleep or awake. Visions are sensory, intellectual, and unconscious. They feature a wide range of beings, that being angel, saints, and even animals. There are 4 types of visions.
So firstly, the group visions, and this involves multiple people. And for instance, you've got the Angel of Mons story, and this occurred during the Battle of Mons at Belgium during World War I, where many British soldiers saw angels protecting them after a soldier prayed to St. George. We've also got the corporal visions, and this occurred when somebody had a vision of a physical form. For instance, with Bernadette Soubirous had several visions of Mary, the Virgin Queen. One of the visions caused her to scratch away at the ground, which led to water appearing from below, and this developed into the sacred spring called Laudrius. We've also got intellectual visions, and this occurs when someone experiences, rather than just seeing a form. For instance, Saint Teresa of Avila had a series of visions in which she experienced Jesus. She was conscious of Jesus.
Wow.
And imaginative visions, and this occurs when someone experiences a vision in a different realm. For instance, in the book of Revelation, John had visions of heaven.
A famous example is the vision that Saul has on the road to Damascus. The visions appeared from God, which serves to change his bloodthirsty ways. This leads to Paul writing the New Testament. Okay, now we're on to conversion experiences, which is defined as changing one's religion or beliefs, usually deemed as very profound experiences, providing its validity in the change of lifestyle. Conversion experiences typically have 6 main characteristics.
So it is gradual, people convert over a period of time. Volitional, this occurs when a person freely chooses to take a position of faith. Passive, when a person converts unexpectedly. Sudden, a conversion experience that is not over a period of time, a quick experience. Self-surrender, surrendering oneself over to God. And active, when a person actively seeks out conversion.
William James notes that conversion experiences give the most observable evidence of what he calls fruits, providing a greater basis for faith. Starbuck claims that conversion experiences are purely psychological, taking a similar stance to Freud, believing that they are merely expressions of repressed trauma. Similarly, Kant argues that it is logically impossible for us to experience God, so conversion must purely come from the self.
Now on to corporate religious experiences, and the definition of that is several different people all have the same or a similar religious experience at the same time.
A biblical example of this type of religious experience is the story of Pentecost, as the beginning of the book of Acts, where everyone felt the same sensation of a rushing, almighty wind and saw the same tongues of fire appearing. A second example is the corporate religious experience of 6 young teenagers and children in the town of Medjugorje, Bosnia. All 6 had regular visions of the Virgin Mary, beginning in 1981, and they claim that Mary appeared to them and gave them passages of peace, told them secrets, and told them the world needed more prayers. His site now became a place of pilgrimage, but the Catholic Church are sceptical about the claims made about the visions at Medjugorje.
Lastly, the Toronto blessing. This corporate experience is a modern one, where in the US and Canada in the 1990s, a group of people all worshipping together in a church near the airport in Toronto appeared to have the same ecstatic religious experience. According to reports, worshippers at the church had been overcome by the Holy Spirit, which caused them to weep, laugh, speak, and also speak in a strange language, and to fall to the ground. And this could either be, however, the Holy Spirit or actually hysteria, which is caused by something psychological or physiological.
Okay, now we're on to mystical experiences, which is defined as encompassing many kinds of religious experiences, usually bring the receiver a reached understanding of spiritual truth, which cannot be accessed using reason and normal sense experience alone. Lukoff defines mystical experiences as: the mystical experience is a transient, extraordinary experience marked by the feeling of unity, harmonious relationship to the divine, and in everything in existence, as well as euphoric feelings, noesis, loss of ego functioning, alterations in time and space perception, and the sense of lacking control over the event.
Now, William James gives 4 characteristics of mystical experiences. The first is passivity, and it occurs to the participant. And this is the notion that the mystical experience is something that happens to the participant, rather than it being an action of the participant itself. The next is ineffability, and this defies expression. This is the notion that the experience defies expression. The participant is unable to explain the experience he has had. James claimed that the experience is so great that it cannot be expressed in human language. The next is noetic quality and revelation. And mystical states can only provide the participant with knowledge that could not otherwise be gained. This could be an illumination, a revelation, etc. But they give the participant a sense of authority that remains for a significant time after the mystical experience. And next we have transicity, which is long-lasting. Although the mystical experience do not last very, very long, the effects of them are very long-lasting. And for an example, we have one of Teresa of Avila. And the visions she had was of a spear, its golden tip on fire, piercing her side and leaving her with an immense feeling of elation and love. Teresa struggled to explain her feelings and experiences, and this is seen as ineffable. Next, she was able to reflect on them in later writings. The religious experience was passive, and they gave her new insights into her faith, which is noetic, and as well as being short-lived but with lasting impacts, which is transient. So furthermore, with mystical experience, we've also got Rudolf Otto. And he believed that when one has a religious experience, there are 2 things occurring: an experience beyond our experience, which fills us with awe, terror, and fear, plus a fascinating and alluring experience that draws us into. And Otto believed in a dual nature of religious experiences. On the other hand, there is the rational, that is the morality, the theistic proofs, and so on. On the other hand, there is the non-rational, the deeper, inconceivable, supernatural nature of God. And Otto called this the mystium tremendus et fascinanus, which is mysterious, scary, and fascinating.
The 3 elements of mysterium tremendum are orphanus. This is characterized by a religious or mystical dread of the noumenon, which has absolute unapproachability. Majesty. In the presence of God, there is a crushing feeling of personal nothingness and insignificance. Energy. God is alive and active, demanding a personal response. The 3 elements of mysterium facetians are mercy. God, the Holy, can give us a state of salvation. Love, we have a personal, thorough relationship with God. Comfort, in the experience, we find feelings of release, satisfaction, and fulfillment. However, Otto believed that religious experience cannot be defined and cannot be taught, but that everyone has an inbuilt capacity to have a religious experience and to experience the holy. Okay, now we're on to psychological explanations of religious experiences. First, we have Ludwig. Feuerbach claimed God is projection of men's desires, drives, and longings. God is made in the image of man. This reduces the role of God down to one of superstition. Religious experiences were therefore nothing more than a creation of the human mind, a supernaturalistic wish realized, nothing more. Miracles are the sorcery of imagination, which satisfies, without contradiction, all the wishes of the heart. Feuerbach saw this as harmful. However, as it alienates man, we are prevented by taking responsibility. Gods in the past could be seen as to made justified seas. Now, as we can scientifically prove it, we don't need religion. Gods solve the unsolvable problems we don't know how to solve.
Now we have Freud. Freud thought that religion was an illusion based on human wishes to help us overcome our inner conflict, our stress, and our fear of danger. The mind creates things to fulfill its own longings. This is known as wish fulfillment. Religion is a form of neurotic behavior caused by trauma buried deep in our psyche. At the bottom of every case of hysteria, there are one or more occurrences of premature sexual experiences, occurrences which belong to the earliest years of childhood. So religion is an illusion created by the mind to help us come to terms with the powerfully ambivalent emotions suffered during sexual development.
Now we have physiological explanations of religious experiences. C.G. Jung suggests that religious experiences could just be chemical reactions within the brains. For instance, Jung is said to have a vision after having injections for a heart attack. William James, who experimented with nitrous oxide, claimed the mystical consciousness in an extraordinary degree, depth beyond depth, of truth seemed revealed to the inhaler. Aldous Huxley took a pill of mescaline and noted how a vase of flowers were transfigured and how a chair shone with an inner light.
Timothy Leary argued that after eating magic mushrooms, he had the deepest religious experience of my life. And in the Bible, Acts 7, verse 30 to 70, Moses sees a burning bush. However, it can be suggested that as Moses ate the leaves/roots of an acacia bush, known for its hallucinogenic effects beforehand, the bush that Moses actually saw was an hallucination. Next, we have Dr. Linda Corporal, that argued that the cause of the witchcraft in Salem in the 1600s was due to erotism, which is caused by the rotting rye bread, and hallucinations can occur from the rotting fungus.
Now we're on to neurological explanations of religious experiences. Persinger has developed a branch of neurology called neurotheology. He insists that religious experience is caused by the temporal lobe epilepsy. Certain people's brains produce a sensed presence, naturally, which has been mistaken as God. He thinks all great religious leaders of the past, like Moses, Paul, and Jesus, experienced temporal lobe epilepsy from electromagnetic waves that occur naturally in the environment. Stimulating these lobes artificially can cause a religious experience.
Now, Dr. Persinger insists that electromagnetic waves that occur naturally in the environment can cause a religious experience. Overhand pylons, northern lights, electrical appliances, and he tested these electromagnetic waves in a house of a young girl who was having terrible nightmares and found that her alarm clock was actually giving the same fields as the helmet in his lab. And they took the clock away and her nightmares ended. And Persinger sees this as evidence of how temporal lobe sensitivity can induce the sensed presence, which may be interpreted as a ghost or as God. But the problem with Persinger is that it only applies to numinous experiences and not visions or conversions.
Now we have Richard Swinburne, arguments to support religious experiences. Swinburne believed that unless there is evidence to the contrary, then we should believe it to be true. This is the principle of credulity, stating that you should believe your own experiences. If it seems to a subject X is present, then probably X is present. What one seems to perceive is probably so. How things seem to be is good grounds for a belief about how things are. Swinburne maintains that we use this principle as our basis in life, and to start doubting our everyday experiences without good reason puts us at risk of falling into a skeptical block, which is the most undesirable outcome for a man. Swinburne identified 5 examples of unreliability. Faulty perception, could be drugs. Can they replicate the claim in similar circumstances? Do they know what they are talking about? Does it lack evidence? And is there a natural explanation? He then extends this principle with his principle of testimony, applying it to others. What others tell us they have perceived, we think probably happened. Swinburne supported his argument with the analogy of the jungle. He supposed a group of explorers went into the jungle and found a new species, but a second group did not find the species. The experience of the first group is not cancelled out by the second. Their testimony stands because it is just a different experience. Instead, Swinburne believed that genuineness of religious experience should be determined by the changes it brought about in the recipient's life, which, if you think about it more deeply, could be used to support conversion experiences as they bring upon a dramatic change in the individual's life.
So now, for rejections of Swinburne. Firstly, the principles are too generous, and Gary Gutting gives the example of his dead aunt. If he came into his office and saw his dead auntie sat in his chair, then he would not be entitled to believe that she was real, despite the fact that he satisfies his Swinburne's special considerations. The next is the burden of proof on the wrong side. The person making the claim is required to prove it, not the skeptic. If I claim to have been abducted by aliens, I have to prove I was. It is not up to you to prove I wasn't. Next, we have the all experiences are not the same, and Ayer argues this point when he claimed that religious experiences are different to other types of experiences because they cannot be verified by others. Lastly, Cole notes that the principles can equally be used to probe the non-existence of God. I have not experienced God, and God does not exist.
So now we've got an example essay here, which is 4 marks, A star. The question is, corporate religious experiences are less reliable than individual religious experiences. Discuss. If you could go through this and have a check your knowledge, maybe you could use a couple things from here. It's from a really reliable website, so give it a go.